Welcome, everybody, to the Forever Classic Podcast. It is April 3rd, 2022, and I am Joe Simpson, one of your esteemed hosts here at Forever Classic Games, and I am once again glad to be joined by fellow host, Zach. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm a little sore today. Landscaping is a whole new beast for the year.
You had sent some pictures, and it was just like a lot of rocks.
Yeah. So we bought a 3,000-pound pallet of stone, like that flat old-timey like stacked wall stone that vary from like thin to kind of thick, but not like the uniform pavers or anything people would use.
Yeah.
So
you're like looking at these pieces and trying to figure out the best way to like put them together so that they make something cohesive.
Yeah, so basically we started with the circle. We dug out a chunk of all the grass, put it down a bit, tamped the ground, put the ring of rocks around it, and then started from the center and made our spiral. And what we're going to do is we're going to make that go up about 3 feet tall, and it's going to circle rocks up. So we have this like really nice, pretty rock spiral that we're going to plant herbs around.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to start with the ones that need like all day sun and sort of thing up at the top, and rotate them around it to where the ones that don't necessarily need all day sun will be more on the hidden from the sun side for the part of the day that they really won't get it. And it'll help kind of irrigate itself down. Hopefully everything should work well, and then we get nice fresh herbs growing again this year. We've had good success with like basils and thymes, and some success with cilantro. Got some good success with mint. But now we're going to just try a whole bunch of other things this year, especially because we're making this whole space just for that. And then along our fence line, we're going to try to do the like just stone planters. So we'll just stack them up, squared off, and then it'll come back and we'll terrace up one layer of stuff and come back up and just kind of go up our yard like that.
Nice. Yeah, so we've got some landscaping we need to do, but we're not there yet. There's so many projects we need to do, but we do have like raised garden beds, and last summer we took all of our yard debris and I had put together, using some pallets that the previous owners just left behind, I put together like a compost bin. And so I threw all of our yard debris into this compost bin, and so it's just been sitting there since last summer, and it's like half the size it was. Like that's how much it has like broken down in that time. The only real concern is that it's a lot of pine needles, and that can, I guess, produce fairly acidic compost. But we do have a fire pit, and ashes can help bring that closer to neutral. So I think if we just stir in all the ashes from the fire pit, because that should be cleaned out anyway, it might do us a little bit of good. So hopefully
True.
We can get some food growing this year. I think I had 2 tomato plants last year, and by the time everything was ripe, things had gotten to it already. And so I think I maybe harvested a single tomato. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I hope we get some good tomatoes going this year. We had a lot of grape ones, so we're going to aim for like the normal fist-sized tomatoes this year.
That would be sweet. But yeah, we're here to talk about other things, though, I think.
I think so.
Are we suddenly a gardening and landscaping podcast that I didn't know about?
We are multifaceted nerds.
It's whatever we want it to be, is what it is.
It's true. This is true. We can be just as nerdy about gardening as we are about games.
That's probably true. There's some like I definitely know people that like really dig into like gardening books and tips and try different like irrigation and stuff in the same way that I like pour over like a D&D rule book.
Yeah, we're not quite as strict on it yet because we haven't gotten that far. You know, year 1 was what happens. Year 2 was let's try this thing and see if it works. So we kind of know what does and doesn't, at least from what we've tried. And now this year will be build up what works, try a few other things and see if they stick against the wall or not, and then kind of rinse and repeat, keep doing the good, and then keep doing stuff with the soil, because we'll have to start doing like actual like soil work.
Yeah. So I think it's time for everyone's favorite bit. Joe presents an idea. It's brilliant, but it wouldn't really work in real life. This one could maybe. It's not a terrible idea, but I just don't have an avenue in which to like execute said idea. Are you like me in that there's a mug, like a coffee mug in the house that is your favorite?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of people. There's a mug that they consider basically theirs. It's like it's not technically theirs. Anyone can use it, but if it's available, you will use it over every other mug. And I think that's true of a lot of people. Now, you don't see him as much anymore, but for a long time, I think the same was for shot glasses.
I believe so. Yeah,
People would like collect and gather shot glasses, and they would have their favorite daily shot glass or whatever for the like coming in from a hard day's work or whatever, and you'd grab your whiskey and grab your shot glass and kick it back. What if we combined the two and made tiny little mugs for shots and called them mug shots?
It sounds really fun, actually.
Like you got this little thing. Now, I presented this idea to Alex off stream, off recording, because I knew he wasn't going to be here. And he said, Joe, those already exist. It's called an espresso. And I'm like, no, it's a mugshot. But you could do something where like you like buy like a pack and it's got a big regular mug and a tiny little mug, and they're like got the same design on it or whatever, or a complementary design, and they go together. So you could like very easily do like what's the like you take like the Bailey's like cream liqueur or whatever and drop it in.
Oh, the Irish car bombs.
Yeah, you could do something like that with this like set called a mug shot or whatever, where you get a mug and a shot.
That's fair.
I'm also realizing that pretty much 99% of all of my ideas are just bad puns.
That's just fine. That's perfect for us.
You know what's not a bad pun, though? Our Patreon.
This is true.
If you head on over to patreon.com/foreverclassicgames, right? You can give us money. You don't really get anything yet because we're still building it. But if you like what we do, you want to support us in just a small way, you can definitely do that through Patreon. And as soon as there are rewards available, you would have access to them. We can probably even come up with something for like early backers before there were rewards, get an extra reward in the future of some sort. But if that's something you would like to do to help us out, we would really super appreciate it. All the money that we receive goes straight back into improving audio, improving site design and layout, buying other equipment or games or things that you guys want to see on stream. So yeah, patreon.com/foreverclassicgames. And then our last announcement is later this month, Alex is heading to PAX. He's going to be in Boston for like 4 or 5 days. He found a group to stay with while he was there for a decent price, so he's really looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting, though, because it seems like a lot of the bigger hitters, like a lot of the AAA studios, are not going to be present yet at cons. And so this is an opportunity for some like indie titles to maybe take the lead of the news cycle because they're going to be on the floor. But it also could end up being like a really low turnout because there isn't those big draw parties to like bring in the people. But maybe a smaller con is kind of what's in order. Maybe that'll be kind of more homey or comfortable. I don't know. Looking forward to that. But if you want to connect if you're going to PAX and want to connect with Alex, definitely reach out to us on social media, and I'm sure Alex would love to meet up with you.
Oh, for sure. I think Alex will be having a blast.
Yeah.
It's going to be hopefully it ends up being a good trip, and like you said, I really hope that there's some good indies that get to like kind of be this like forerunner, whether they intended to or not.
Yeah. So, what have you been playing?
Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. That's it.
How is it so far? Like, what are some specific things that you're really liking about it?
It plays really well. So I didn't play 3, mostly because I didn't have time. I had a lot of other stuff going on. So I basically just skipped it, which is kind of sad. It was pretty cool. I missed a lot of things for the story, so I've got to like read up on it. But all of my friends that I've played Borderlands with since basically 1 and like the early parts of 2, have all basically agreed that 2's like the Borderlands game. Like, it's definitely top of the thing. It's got the most fun DLC, most fun stuff to do in it. And then they kind of cascade down. But we've definitely plugged in Wonderlands right below 2.
Very cool.
And this is before any DLC, any other tweaks they do. It's really early on in the cycle. So we're having high hopes that it matches 2 in our love of everything playing, and then maybe even could pass it, depending on how long they want to run with it and how much they want to do with it. Because it's a blast right now. We just started doing endgame stuff, so the endgame is Chaos Dungeons. So you get this basically like an instance you get to go into, you get to farm random gear, it puts you in like 3 random battles, a mini boss, 3 random battles, a boss. There are some secret bosses that you can unlock, maybe, if you complete their like little mini puzzles, and if they even show up. They're all random.
Okay.
So you can fight 3 mini bosses at the end of the game after you've finished everything, but before the end of the run. So if you fail at the bosses, you fail everything. So you also kind of have to like, if you fail the run, you don't get anything. So just completing it and getting out gets you your cool goodies, your extra gear. Fighting the bosses gets you a lot more, but it's also more risk of just not getting anything. And if you activate more than one boss, they go boss, done, next boss, start. Like there's no in between, no downtime, no changing room. Well, it changes the room, but you don't get to do anything. You're in the fight. There's no pause. You're just in the next boss fight. And then there's the super secret boss, which we haven't unlocked yet, although we were really close. You beat all 3 bosses, and then you got to fight the 4th super extra hard boss at the end.
Oh, good.
And the pop culture references are on point. I've missed a few things playing through, but my favorite one right now has been a reference to One Piece because of the snails when they make phone calls.
Yeah.
I cannot do the sound justice. But in each zone, there's like a rune puzzle you find, and it's really just kind of like a time to go fetch and grab these 3 things, like run through the zone.
Yeah.
But when you get to this zone with a bunch of pirates and you find it, Tina announces that there's a rune puzzle that you're nearby by saying puzzle, puzzle, puzzle in the phone sound of the snail phones from One Piece. And it's just, I didn't catch it the first time because I was in such a rush. But when I went back through and was kind of doing side quest stuff, I got it and was like, yes. I was like, that's excellent.
That's hilarious. Is there anything you like don't really like about it, or like it's kind of falling short?
I'm really loving it, like overall. But I have one problem that I don't know if it's a me problem because I've had it in every game I've ever played that requires me to like move a lot because I get stuck on the environment, like all of it. Like in old Call of Duty Ghost, there was one piece of rebar that was like just a texture on the ground, not even a wall, like not even like you change height, like going over it, and I would just get stuck on it. And that happens to me constantly in Tiny Tina's though. Like I'll get stuck on like actual environment that I should be moving over.
Interesting.
But that's just
always be jumping.
Yeah, in place because I'm stuck.
There you go.
But it's great. There's other people have other complaints, but honestly, it's not got a whole lot of like negative heat. People are kind of sad that it was short, but there's a lot of DLC coming.
Reception has been better than 3. Like coming off, but I think coming off of 2 with how good it was considered, 3 had a lot of like expectations on it, and so when it didn't meet those, I think it hurt people more. Like hurt its reception a little bit more. Now coming off of 3,
Wonderlands has got a good reception coming off of that low bar kind of taste.
But it seems like it's a really fun spin on the formula of like a fantasy setting, but with the same still like looter shooter gameplay and kind of like snarky sense of humor and whatnot.
Yeah. Wanda Sykes' Fret the robot is hilarious. Listening to her just go on and on with like D&D tabletop banter is top notch.
So I think when you were streaming it, I think I asked this: Is Will Arnett a voice in it as well? Because there's someone that sounded a lot like him.
Yeah, he's the Dark Lord.
Okay.
So he's the BBEG.
Got it. Okay, I'm like I sounded familiar, and I think I asked it in the stream, but then I had to leave. So if you answered the question, I didn't hear it.
I did.
Okay, sorry.
But yeah, that's totally him. So that spell I was casting was like one of the pre-order things. But it just gives you his voice line, and he constantly berates you. He's like, you got all my power. He's like, and you're doing this.
For me, I finally wrapped up on Persona 4 Golden on the PlayStation Vita. Very fun game. I'm really glad that I finally played a Persona game. It's funny that I started with 4 and not 5 when 5 is like the one that everyone's always talking about. I have a weird history with the Persona games in the sense that in college, I had some friends that I would visit, and there was like 4 of them sharing like an apartment. And anytime I was over there, at least one of those people, at least one of those 4 was playing, I think, Persona 3 at the time. And it was always only the parts where they were just going to school and choosing who they were going to hang out with after school, or what club, like, oh, I'm going to go to basketball practice. I'm like, what is this video game? This seems terrible. Like, I already am not like a huge fan of like The Sims, and this is even less engaging than The Sims because it's just portraits of characters popping up and saying voice dialogues and stuff. But I've heard a lot of like universal acclaim about Persona 4, so I finally give it a shot. It's got some excellent writing. Like, there's like a mystery at the core of it that's really, really good as you try to find the truth of it all. That's really like the core of the story is things aren't what they seem. Seek truth. And so you kind of got to get to the center of this this murder mystery that's happening in this like small rural Japanese town, and you are there because your parents are working abroad and you can't just stay home by yourself, so they send you to live with your uncle. And as it goes, it's you kind of like, you meet these people, you meet these different characters, and they really endear themselves to you. And then there's like the dungeon parts where you're going through these dungeons where people are facing the truth within themselves, their various fears or maybe embarrassing parts of their personalities that they're trying to squish down. And they there's this like weakness, and like there's like weakness like gameplay tier part of it where like if you hit somebody with a weakness or a critical hit, it knocks them down. If they get knocked down, you can do a rush attack and everyone all like piles on like the enemies and things like that. So there's a lot of like playing around with that, but by the end you really feel for most of these characters. Two of the characters I was not a fan of, and I basically didn't interact with them at all because basically everything out of their mouths I just found cringy and was kind of demeaning to the women and girls. Clearly just like objects of desire for this one character, and then the other one is just like basically a child who is feeding off of the other character, and it's just like ugh. But then you also have characters like Nanako, who's like your little cousin who's like 7, and she's just so adorable. And maybe that's some bias from me being a dad. I was like, I need to protect this little girl at all costs. And so like, you know, there's like in a lot of like games there's like romance options and things like that. But yeah, I overall really, really enjoyed it. And huge shout out to our mutual friend and member of the Forever Classic Discord, Rakimdar, pointed out to me that there's another thing to do. Like, I thought the game had ended, but to get the true ending, you have to like, it's kind of tricky. It's telling you that it's time to go, but you say no, and then you go back and you unlock another scene at like, you, even when you try to go there, it's like, there's really nothing you can do here. Are you sure you want to go? And so it's like really like baiting you into not going. And so you say yes, you push through to go, and then you unlock like the whole thing. Like every JRPG, the trope that the real evil was something else the whole time. And it adds like another 4 or 5 hours of gameplay and content. And so I think the story bits of like, you see a little bit more of character interaction, I thought that was really valuable. But in terms of like adding to the story, I actually thought it was a worse story because of it. I actually really appreciated it when it was grounded in you find out who's behind these murders, and you find like it felt very self-contained and all this stuff, and then suddenly you're fighting God, and I'm like, what? Like I was about to give this game props for not fighting God, because that you do that in so many games, in particular JRPGs. But I don't think I said anything too spoilery, so if that all sounds great to you, definitely check it out. A murder mystery with teenagers getting to know each other and unlock, like a lot of it is built around building relationships with various people, and so there's that huge element of there, and it impacts how well they perform in combat. And so then there's like this kind of monster collecting mechanic as well, as you unlock more and more personas to use at your disposal. Finishing that up, I was going to jump into another JRPG because I'm sitting on 2 Shin Megami Tensei games, 3 and 5, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe before I dive into another crazy, long JRPG, I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I actually I'm back into Control. I'm going to finish that up because that's going to be a shorter experience, way different gameplay. On the RTX 3070 Ti, it cranks. It looks really, really good most of the time. But every now and then, some textures don't load in at full res. And so, like, you'll be looking at a piece of paper, like, on a desk, and it will just be, like, someone compressed a JPEG way down. And then, like, you'll look at it again later, and it'll have finally loaded in, and it's, like, super crisp, and you can, like, read the words on the page. But it's, as a huge fan of the X-Files, this has some strong X-Files vibes as you're, like, wandering around this, like, government facility dedicated to observing and studying, like, paranormal phenomena. So there's, like, these different, like, objects and stuff that you come across that are center points of these things. Like at one point you go to this place and there's just like a light switch string just hanging there, and you pull it and suddenly you're in a hotel. Like it's just like full of these like weird experiences, and it's also a mystery game, so apparently that's the mood I'm in as you like uncover what's going on with this facility and stuff like that.
Control was great. The only thing I haven't played of it is the Alan Wake expansion, and I think that's the important one.
I knew that it was connected in some ways, and I don't think I have the DLC.
Yeah, I don't have it yet. I'm going to get it eventually, but it's great.
And then Alex put in here that he's been playing Dawn of the Monsters, which is a kaiju-based like beat 'em up, and I didn't really see him playing it at all, but I could hear him play it, and it sounded like he was having a blast. So just giggling and laughing with the person that he was playing it with. So keep an eye out for Dawn of the Monsters. We should be having a review up here pretty soon, I think, is the plan from Alex. So we've got that. So we've coming up on the next portion, various gaming, current events, and news. What do you got for us, Zach?
I guess to start everything off, E3's canceled completely again. Now this one, I'd seen people slowly pulling back on it here and there. Like we'd seen, I want to say last week or the week before, I'd seen them talk about like canceling, or people started pulling out of it or canceling pieces of it early. And it just sounded like the whole thing was going to just go downhill again. Because E3's not been able to be open in what, like 4 years? Something like that. I think maybe they tried to do a digital one in there that didn't do very well.
I think this will be the 4th year that we haven't had a full E3 experience. Maybe. I don't remember exactly. But I was a little bit surprised to see it, because it seems like maybe it's because E3 was already kind of a dying like project, like to the point that other studios were hosting their own cons like across the street.
Yeah, I remember watching. I remember because Devolver Digital or something got into a thing with them, and they gave them some flack, so they put their own booth across the street to do their own, and it was so good.
Yeah, well, basically, I think what happened is that the prices for their booths were more expensive than to just rent out the convention building across the street or something like that. And it was just like, well, you're going to have a bunch of gamers walking by across the street anyway. For this price, what if we just did our own little thing?
Which is smart of them, because as much as E3 was like a staple for like us growing up, like it like became way less needed.
Leading up to like 2006 E3, like right before the PlayStation 3 came out, that mid 2000s era was like peak excitement for E3 for me. Because I remember every year just like tuning in to like the various like YouTube videos and web broadcasts of the event, and reading news, and like seeing the reveal of like the banana PlayStation 3 controller and like things like that. Like all of that is like ingrained into my memory as a part of my history with video games. But it just seems like the hype around this event has gone down so much. And some of it might be because there really isn't anything like... Part of the competition back then was innovation. And now almost every console is pretty much the same.
Yeah. And at that time, like, communications were still, like... They weren't awful, but they weren't what they are today. Like,
yeah, there was
anybody can digitally produce their own content. Like,
yeah, look at us bozos.
Yeah, you know, you're looking at things like TikTok and stuff. Those are very easy to do after you've learned it. And if you have people in your studio dedicated to doing some like stuff like that, why pay out the ass to go do that when you could just produce the content and just do it? And that's what they're doing, because everybody has access to it now. You know, overarchingly, not everybody, but most people.
Nintendo's got their Nintendo Direct. Sony's got State of Play. Even individual studios have been doing, like, I think Yacht Club did like a Yacht Club Presents type thing. Larian Studios have regular updates and streams with updates to progress on Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah, a lot of these people are taking this into their own hands, and as a result, players that are interested in that specific studio or in that specific like brand show up and watch it, rather than tuning in all week or at a specific time to try and find out when, you know, what Sony's got this year. Sony can kind of put down, this is what we're doing anytime. They don't need like a specialized like event to do it. They don't need to bring in like, they don't need to appeal to the journalism side of gaming to cover it for them, because they can just cover it themselves, and journalists get the info at the same time as everybody else.
Yeah. So yeah, I think honestly, like, because even in this article, they talk about like taking a step back and seeing if everybody's really hungry for that classic E3 experience. And I think while people would enjoy something like that, it's obsolete.
So here's the thing. E3 changed a lot over the years, particularly in the last like 10 years. It became much more corporatized. It became much more. I think they opened it to the public, so it wasn't just gaming personalities and journalism and things like that. It became a much more inclusive event rather than exclusive event. It was no longer for people in the industry. It was for anybody. And I think that's where like the big change came. While they're already kind of in a break due to the pandemic, now might be the time to reconsider, if we come back, what does that look like? And how do we execute it successfully? Like, rather than rushing, I think if they're going to come back, this is the right call. Let's wait and see. Let's spend time. If we're going to come back, let's spend the time and do it right, rather than rushing and having a failure. Like, I'm sure there's still some pandemic concerns, but I think it almost seems like they're really taking the time to, like, evaluate whether or not it's worth the investment.
Yeah, and in my opinion, I don't think it is, because, again, you can do so many more things. Like, you could maybe change the whole thing into something completely different, something more akin to a con, because it seemed like it was going that way anyway. So you'd have something like,
yeah,
Dragon Con, the E3, or like Otakon, the E3 like type event, so that it's more panels, more stuff going on, rather than so industry inclusive. Just an event that people would want to gather around, rather than one that you're trying to like force a square into a circle. Like, this is what it's always been, and we're gonna keep trying to like pound at this, like change it completely. Then maybe it just become another weekend. People knock off their chart or off their calendars so that they could go to an event, have fun, do a bunch of stuff with other different people, maybe see some cool new stuff, new exclusives, but nothing what you'd think when you hear the words E3.
Yeah, it would also be cool to see them maybe like model after some other cons that have been successful, particularly like looking at those post-pandemic. Maybe that's what they're doing this year, is seeing what's working, what isn't, in kind of this new mindset around huge gatherings. There are plenty of people that are just ready to go, but there's a lot of people that are hesitant. And studio devs and owners included in that. Seeing it with PAX, some of the bigger studios they're not going because there's still risk to be considered. But if they did an E3 that was closer to PAX, where it was very fan-centric and like based around creating, like, you wander around all these tables and try out these things, but there's also like board games and like other showings and things like that, and events that you can attend and do. Like, I think that was all a part of the E3 experience, but PAX was on a smaller scale and basically doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it definitely hit more, like, there were lots of big things, but I feel like I associated PAX with more indie things.
Yeah.
And I associated E3 with like
that's when Sony
untouchable AAAs.
Yeah, that's when Sony announces their next console, but that hasn't been the case. Sony announces their next console a month before E3, and then you might get an update about it at E3. Like,
yeah. And honestly, one of the other things I've noticed is, like, I've tried to ask like younger folks about it, and I say younger, like, 18, getting closer into like half our age sort of.
You excited
deal.
about E3? What's that?
Exactly, that's the thing. Like, I guess you could put it in the framework of like, it's kind of a fossil thing at this point. Like, it's old enough that it
was really exciting in its time. Like I said, it was how we, growing up in the mid 2000s, got our major video game news of the year. That's when they announced the new Xbox, the new PlayStation, the next Nintendo consoles. It's when we got major game announcements. It's when new studios would show off new technology, and then of course there's the kind of the cringy side of it with like booth girls and things like that. But there's also legendary moments where I think it was Sega announced the price of the Dreamcast, was it? And then Sony came out and just the whole presentation was just them offering a lower price for their console. I don't remember exactly, but speaking of Sony, this last month they announced new PlayStation Plus tiers, which is very interesting because they had PlayStation Now as they're considered their major competitor to things like Game Pass or Nintendo Online.
Which was foolish of Sony because it was shit.
Yeah, it wasn't implemented well, and the consoles weren't built around it, and it relied on a hefty internet service because you weren't downloading games, you were playing them, you were streaming them to your console. And so I think this is probably a smart move for them. Now, what's interesting is that there's different like tiers of it, whereas like Xbox also has tiers, but it's like you can get Game Pass, but then you can get Game Pass Ultimate, and Ultimate gives it to you for PC and console, whereas you can get it, or you can just get it for console or PC. This is somewhat similar to that. I don't know all the details, but there's the base tier that will stay the same. You're like $60 a month or whatever, or $60 a year, gets you your 2 to 3 free games every month, your online access to everything, you're good to go. No problems. That doesn't change. But for increasing amounts, you can increase tiers, which gives you access to like collections of games. So the first tier, I think, gives you... Let me pull this up.
It gives you...
PlayStation Plus Extra gives you downloadable catalog of nearly 400 PS5 and PS4 games. And that is $100 a year for Extra. And then there's Premium, which gives you PS3 game streaming, PS1, PS2, and PSP game catalog for download and streaming, and time-limited game trials. And that tier is $120 a year. So if you up it annually, it's a better deal at $120 for the year. I think this is their attempt, because Microsoft has done really great with their legacy content and their backwards compatibility. Like you can buy and play original Xbox games and Xbox 360 and Xbox One on the latest console. They've got a huge slew of PC games from all eras of PC gaming available on Game Pass. And so to have this service where it includes downloading and streaming of PS1, PS2, and PSP game is huge. And then, of course, the downloadable catalog of nearly 400 PS5 and PS4 games at a slightly lower tier. But if you're really looking for that backwards compatibility, that retro content, is it worth $120 a year? Which, based off of Game Pass's pricing, is similar at $10 a month.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in it for just the Sony exclusives, maybe. I mean, if you're just wanting to play online like everybody, I'm glad they haven't done any changes. Like, they didn't make that an extra $1, extra $3 a month, because that would have been really bad. Leaving it alone was a very smart move to me.
And then just building on it.
And building up from there was probably the best move, because there are people who are going to want that regardless. So that's good. Gives them more money options as a business, gives people more options to get more things. And that's fine. I don't see anything wrong with it. I wish it would be completely expansive. So hopefully they continue to add stuff that even like flop into all of those catalogs from like PS1 days and onward.
Yeah. So it looks like the list of PS1, PS2, PS3, and PSP games included is to reach about 340 titles. What those titles are is not been released yet, so I think that's going to be a pretty deciding factor for some people. Like, are there games out there on the market, on the retro market, that are hard to find or expensive to find, that you pay $120 and you can just play any of them for a year? That might be worth pursuing.
Yeah, and like one game comes to mind, and it's just a game that I really enjoyed, and that's like the Mega Man Legends series.
Could also see them including what is it, Lunar Star Story or something like that. It's like a series of like JRPGs that can get very expensive. Those would be good options for that. But there's so many like PS1 titles specifically that have gotten HD upgrades and are available to just play and buy on like the Nintendo Switch now, even with modern upgrades to their gameplay. Even PS2 is interesting because for a while they were releasing some PS2 classics, but they didn't make it very far. They haven't released them forever. So I think, and then PSP will be a very interesting thing to see on like you got your 65-inch 4K TV and you've got a PSP game on it.
Yeah. But hey,
if it's a way to finally like play some of these games, because I don't think like games like Final Fantasy VII on the PSP, the side story featuring Zack, isn't available for a digital purchase. You have to find a physical copy of it and have a PSP in order to play it.
Yep.
And so if a title like that makes it on there, that's huge for like game preservation and being able to play retro content. I don't recall seeing anything about any of these being available on PC, which would be a huge draw for me. I mean, I have a PS4, but I kind of like having everything here, which is why I've enjoyed Game Pass, because it has allowed me to try out a lot of new things. On the complete opposite spectrum of suddenly having access to a bunch of retro things and having more access to legacy content from the Sony, Nintendo announced the Wii U and 3DS eShop closures coming up in 2023.
Which is kind of sad, because there won't be a way to get those things anymore.
Yeah, you'll have to rely on that retro market, which
and that'll
is already insanely expensive right now.
Yeah, and on top of that, there'll be worse. The digital-only releases you won't be able to get.
Mm-hmm.
Like, unless you've got them downloaded or you get a hold of, like, a cracked ROM somewhere and emulate it, you can't get that anymore, period.
That said, there are a ton of articles going out right now with, like, top 10 or top 20 or best games to get before the Wii U and 3DS eShop closes. So if you're looking for recommendations, you just, do a quick Google search and you'll find so many options. A lot of YouTubers are putting out their recommendations of things to buy, and it's a cheaper way to get a lot of these games right now because the physical versions are way inflated. Except Wii U. Some of the Wii U physicals are still dirt cheap, but I imagine after the store closes, that will no longer be the case.
I would imagine, yeah.
It is also my understanding that they're not closing access to your content. No more sales will happen. So you can still re-download things. You will have access to the things you've purchased beyond the closure of the eShop. You just will no longer be able to purchase anymore. I also know that the 3DSs are stupidly easy to hack now. So you can just download ROMs of games. So if you're in the market for a 3DS, which I still sometimes pick mine up. I loved my 3DS. I was a day one adopter. I'm also in the 3D slider all the way up club. I still geek out about that 3D screen on the 3DS. I know a lot of people turned it off and I'm like, but it's so cool.
It was fun. I didn't get into it early. I got into it with Monster Hunter 3.
Okay.
And that's where I got into it. There, got more Animal Crossing, got into a couple other things with that, and that's where I had my big takeoff for all of those.
I've always been a portable gamer. One of my first consoles, new consoles, was a Game Boy Color. So Pokemon and other Game Boy titles. I loved the DS. I loved the 3DS. Being on the bus a lot for school, having that portable gaming in my pocket was always huge for me. At my original 3DS, I ended up selling, unfortunately, because we needed money. But then later on, I picked up the new 3DS XL, which is awesome, and I put probably thousands of hours onto that thing. Even to this day, I will sometimes play through a game on it because it's just still a solid console. And then now with the Switch, I mostly play it in portable mode. Mm-hmm. And that's just apparently how I like to play games is just anywhere I want. But yeah, it is sad that it is closing. I get it why it's closing. Maybe, I don't know the metrics, how often things sell on that shop anymore. I'm sure it's gone up recently with people panic buying. But particularly on the Wii U side with the low adoption rate, I understand why Nintendo wouldn't want to keep those servers up or keep that shop maintained when the Switch requires so many resources to maintain and is so busy with sales probably daily. Yeah.
It'll be sad to see it go. Hopefully they do some game preservation for it, but Nintendo's got a bad track record of that.
Yeah.
So hopefully some other people have got a good setup for it and don't get immediately taken down, because that seems to also be a thing that keeps happening.
That is also true. Something that Nintendo is pretty good about, though, is recognizing when they need to push a game out in order to complete it correctly. And Breath of the Wild 2, its release window has been announced for 2023. Not surprising to me. I know a lot of people were excited that it was going to come out this year, and I was like, there's no way. Unless it's they're reusing so much from Breath of the Wild in Breath of the Wild 2, but I think they want to push that even further. I think they want to do more with it, and I think they're going to have to rebuild some things in order to do it. And that seems to be the case here. I wouldn't be surprised if we start exploring you know how big the world was in Breath of the Wild. I would not be surprised if we got like a shadow version of it. Like they're making like going back to like Link to the Past, and we're suddenly have a shadow version of the overworld that we also can explore.
That would be very cool.
And I think that's might be why it's taking so long. That's my prediction. It could also just be that they've been focused on so many other games because Nintendo has released a lot of content the last few years.
Yeah, arguably Nintendo's been the hot runner of just out producing and out like qualitying like Xbox and PlayStation.
Yeah.
While they're battling back and forth with stupid battles, Nintendo's just like, hey guys, here's you some more content. Have fun.
We're gonna create our own game and not worry about this other game that the other two guys are worried about, and we're just gonna win our own game.
Yeah. They've been doing well. Outside of Breath of the Wild and Nintendo selling nicely, Capcom announced a 30% increase in base salaries for their company.
That is a huge win for the video game industry, particularly in the case like Capcom's business model as a AAA developer is so different than, say, Activision Blizzard or EA, where so much of their content has like microtransactions and monthly subscription fees built into it that require you to like constantly be paying money. Capcom's just like, here's a full Monster Hunter game. Here's a remake of Resident Evil 2. Here's a brand new Resident Evil game. And they're all like fairly solid, well-received products. Finished out the gate. They work day one. Their business model is unlike anything else, and it's working for them. People are recognizing quality out of Capcom, and so when they announce a new product, people are interested. Like for Monster Hunter, they could just like sell tiny little DLC packs of new monster experiences, but instead they wait and sell you a $30 expansion to it at a later date.
Yeah, and I like they have an okay mix of microtransactions to me because they're not needed aside from the DLC. It's just like silly cosmetic stuff. Like you want your owl to look like the mechanical owl from, what was it, Attack of the Titans? Like, cool, we got you. Just $1. You give us $1 here, that's your couch cushion change for a week, or some random stuff from your car junk, and you can have your pretty owl. Like, not needed, won't change anything.
But I think this is a case of Capcom like really standing their ground on their business model of, we are here to make games and provide people with entertainment, and that is making them money to the point that their base salaries are all raised 30%, and that's huge.
That is huge. And I'm really glad to see any studio do that, because you don't hear that very much. You hear way more of, oh, the CEO just got an extra $20 million bonus for the year. Ho, ho, ho.
Well, what a, like, look at the crap year Activision had with the lawsuits and sexual assault allegations and work culture being full of like misogyny and sexism and racism and like crunch culture and things like that. But then on top of that, they're releasing things like the latest Call of Duty, which was not received well at all.
And Call of Duty hasn't been received well at all in like 6 iterations.
But they're still convinced that this is the way to do it.
Like,
and I don't think it's working for them.
Right. Now, like, I'll give them a little, like, the Warzone was a good reception. People really liked it.
But now they've stopped supporting it because their new game is out.
Yeah, and other than that, like, one of the same things that they always have problems with is really bad hackers. And they do not have a robust enough system in place to keep that sort of thing muddled out. They started kind of, like, filtering it, so once you were flagged with hacking something, you were just shuffled into, like, a hacker pile. So you were always kind of matched with others like you. But it's still, that's not quite enough.
Yeah. And the thing is like, on paper, I can see how, like, what they're doing on paper looks really good. Like, oh, we just sell people what they want. They want this, like, this special gun or this skin or this add-on pack. We'll just keep selling them. Oh, we'll sell them season passes. We'll sell them all these little bobs and ends and odds and ends and things and whatever. And that's where we'll make all our money. Except if people don't buy your base game because you forgot to make a game that was good, your microtransactions don't happen.
Right.
The only people who are buying your microtransactions are people who are buying the game. And I know long-time Call of Duty fans who skipped the last one because of the reviews that came out for it. And there's also shady things like for the review cycle, the game won't have microtransactions. And then 2 weeks or a month after the game is out, microtransactions are suddenly introduced into the game. And it's clear that they were there from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so it's hurting people's perceptions of these brands. Like, there's a reason people shit all over EA. There's a reason people shit all over Activision and Blizzard right now. And it's because people are seeing this as ways to make money rather than to provide something of quality.
Yep.
But Capcom is different, and they're cool. We're Capcom fans here at Forever Classic. So good job, Capcom. It's very exciting.
Yeah, glad to see that. Sometimes Capcom does some dumb shit, but you know what? They're way lower on the dumb shit pole than everybody else.
They could be Konami.
They could be Konami.
Drive off their best developer, designer, and then turn all their properties into gambling machines.
Shame.
I mean, it has to be making them money, otherwise they wouldn't do it, right?
I don't know. They could just be stupid.
That
I would need to see some hard numbers.
March was full. Like, I think it's clear to say February was like a heavy hitter month with its releases. Like, we had Elden Ring, we had Horizon Forbidden West, and those were like, that was basically all anyone was talking about was Elden Ring for a while. But March had its own slew of releases. I know Alex is excited for Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins, which is basically like a grunge mid-2000s retelling of the first Final Fantasy. Like, if at any point in this game, Green Day just started playing, it wouldn't surprise me. That's just like how mid-2000s this game is.
Yep. Ghostwire Tokyo looks awesome.
I've heard good things. I know one of the contributors here did an interview about it recently for one of the publication he writes for, and I think it's maybe working on a review for us. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it seems like people are excited about it.
Yeah, looked awesome.
Little Gamer and I picked up Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It is a joy to play. We spend so much time laughing and giggling at all the odd things that Kirby becomes, and this mouthful mode where he just puts his mouth over something and then just controls it. He just has his mouth over a car and then you drive the car around. Or he's suddenly a soda machine, or he's a flight of stairs. We've had a lot of fun playing through it.
Oh, Kirby is great. I'll have to.
Which, according to this note from Alex, is Japan's biggest Kirby release. So there's a bigger appeal to it this time around.
Actually, I added that in, and it is.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
they released. That is the biggest Kirby release, and it's now the most sold Kirby of all time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it finished second most sold game. It finished above Elden Ring in Japan and below Pokemon Arceus.
That's probably because everyone already bought Elden Ring and no one else needed to buy it.
But yeah, and I don't know if that was just taking launch numbers, but either way, it's awesome. It's huge.
Yeah, Kirby is always the core formula is Kirby eats an enemy and gets a power, right? Outside of that, they have had no issues experimenting with that. But it's always been a fairly easy, fairly simple platformer experience. And this time around, it feels like they took a little bit of a note out of the 3D Mario Land or World play of tricks. So it's still level based and world based or whatever, but it's not it's not open world like I thought it was going to be, which is fine. But it is 3D centric. You go up and down things and you have full control of where to go up and down and left and right, all of it. And it also just the way it's presented and the way it feels also feels a little bit like when Mario Odyssey came out. You get a little bit of way into the game and you get a theme song of Kirby. Kirby's is eating the car and driving around, and you get this little road trip indie rock song that kind of plays as you go along, and it's super fun.
It's funny you mentioned that because I just sent you a fantastic TikTok with a different song for that.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at it after we're done.
Anybody else who wants to see it, it is in our general chat of the Discord, so please come in and enjoy.
I'll have to take a look at that in a second. Anything else come out that you think is worth mentioning or that you know about?
Off the top of my head, Tunic, but that's the only other thing.
Oh, yeah. And that came out on Game Pass day one. so people could play it right away who are Game Pass. I watched a colleague of ours, Mike Robles, play it a little bit, and it looks very cute, but it was also apparently somewhat challenging. He was struggling with a boss, so it's definitely in that realm of like, it's a very cute presentation, but it's kind of like Hades or Death's Door in its like gameplay, where you like go through these like sections of challenges and levels and things. I don't know, and I don't think it's a roguelike, but it could be. I know very little about it, but it looks very cute. It looks like a game I would give to little gamer. I would give to my daughter, but then 20 minutes later she'd be like yelling and mad at it because apparently it has some challenge.
Yeah, it looks adorable. Looks hard. Definitely something if you're into the like cutesy adventure, go for it.
Very cool. And I think that about wraps it up for us here at Forever Classic Games. Those are the major things that we came across for the month of March going into April. We're excited to see what April will bring. I know we've got Chrono Cross re-release coming out later this month. That's the one that I'm most excited about because I've never played that game. And I recently tried to buy it on the PlayStation Store for the Vita as a PlayStation 1 classic. I mean, I guess I could have played it on PSP or PS3 as well, but I was looking forward to what am I going to play when I'm done with Persona? And I was like, oh, I'll grab the PS1 Classic for Chrono Cross. It's no longer on there. It was removed from the PlayStation Store. And so shortly afterwards, seeing that announcement for like the Dreamers edition of Chrono Cross, which includes extra content that was exclusive to Japan, I'm excited to play that and probably worthwhile picking up on the Switch.
Yeah.
Anything you're looking forward to?
A break. There's a lot going on in a lot of games. Like, I'm not even halfway through Elden Ring. Like, I'm really enjoying my Tiny Tina, like, detour. There's just a lot to do. And as we come into summer, I imagine I'll end up with some more time. Got a lot of life stuff still going on that's kind of eating up some time.
This year is definitely front-loaded for a lot of people, I think. So I think as the year goes on, people will find themselves being able to, like, maybe catch back up a little bit, hopefully, unless we get some surprise releases throughout the year. But yeah, heading into spring, you're doing landscaping, I'm doing some yard work and some gardening, and we've got lots of games to play. Thank you for joining me today, Zach. It's been a lot of fun as usual.
Always, man. It's always great to be here with you.
Where can people find you if they wanted to get in touch?
I am Exquisite Liar on pretty much all social media. You can find me, except for Twitter is exquisite_liar. And that's it.
And I am at the Daddy Gamer on Twitter. That's where you can find me. Or Daddy Gamer YT on Twitch is probably the best places to get in touch with me or to hang out with me. Thank you for watching, everybody. Till next time, have fun, stay cool, play some games.